welcome to the Inflorescence Podcast. I am the host. My name is Bree. This is the first episode, so there's not really much to go on here. And I guess the purpose of this whole episode is just going to be an introduction of what this podcast is, where it came from, and what's to be expected. Inflorescence is a scientific word. So if you're wondering what the hell does the word inflorescence have anything to do with me or with what I do? Allow me to explain it. So inflorescence essentially, without all that scientific stuff, can be defined as in the process of flowering, right? When we think about growth, personal growth, mental health, exploration, self-actualization, self-love, we talk about blooming, and I feel like that's a word that's so commonly used, which I agree with 100%. When we bloom into ourselves, when we become ourselves. So inflorescence is a way of saying that without actually saying that. So metaphorically, the value that it holds to me, and the reason why I named the podcast inflorescence, is because it's about growing into ourselves. Each person goes through a process in which they change. We all look different at different points of our lives. And eventually we come to a point of becoming more in tune and feeling like we are connected to who we're supposed to be. And a lot of this is coming from, the pandemic, which I know for me and for a few others, even in my close circle, the pandemic has taught us how to kind of handle ourselves or feel comfortable with ourselves. You're not in school in person, you're not, or we're not hanging out with bigger groups of people. So you had more time to get in touch with what you felt was most correlated with who you are, rather than what you felt was most correlated with the people that you were hanging out with. And a lot of things happened that changed perspectives, and it's challenging. It's always a challenging moment to go through that change and go through that process, but rewarding definitely is more of a payoff for all those challenges. And so it's just, it's like an event that happened to me and to others that's so powerful. And just through this podcast is a way of me sharing those stories, my story, even eventually, and the stories of others, and how we kind of find ourselves and we find where we fit in. If you don't follow me on, or don't follow the podcast on Instagram, which I'm sure most people don't because I only have about 12 followers, I recently posted a infographic from a quote that I heard in another podcast. And the person who said it, they're an awesome public figure. Their name is Alok, and they said that pardon, they said that shame is joy interrupted. And I already had the idea of doing this podcast before that, but when I heard that quote, I started thinking, like, how can I embody what that quote says in a way that I can put it out there? And what we're going to be doing here is just that, talking about how we now feel all this joy, and where that payoff comes in, where that happiness comes in, even though shame had been there before. And if not shame, then it was hidden anyways, so it's not always as heavy as shame, but part of us is always submerged and repressed for a little bit of time before we can get in touch with ourselves a little bit more. So yeah, that's that's where I'm going with this. And I think also something important to mention is that I am a mental health counselor. I'm a very new mental health counselor. I finished graduate school in May, and it was a great time, a great learning experience, and I've picked up so much that is going to be so helpful for me when I'm doing, my one-on-one sessions, my group sessions, my family sessions, whatever it is that I do. But is also so valuable that I want to share in ways that reach a more wide group of people than just, my clients or people I come in contact with, other mental health counselors, other professionals in the field. Um, I want some of this to be more accessible to people who may not have that accessibility. Like, I don't know, if you just happen to come across this podcast and I'm talking about, sexual identity or gender identity or cultural identity. That could be some sort of a conversation where you don't have or would not have the platform to come into it um, without the podcast. And that's a little bit of a far reach because you know how algorithms work and everything, but it's possible. So that's my goal, is to make these conversations, make this knowledge a little bit more accessible to people who are not in the mental health field. Um, and as important as that is, it's a huge part of my life. Mental health counseling is one of those things where, kind of like a little kid's dream, it was always my I don't know, when you're younger, for example, people ask you what you want to be when you grow up. I never really had an answer, but when I was in high school, that answer came to me, and it was to be a psychologist or a therapist. Um, and I don't know, I mean, I know where that came from. We all know where our dreams come from, but um, yeah, it's just something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I got there, and I wasn't the smartest person in high school whatsoever. And then in college, I just kind of like kicked up the gears and pushed myself to achieve that one thing that, when somebody tells you you can't do something, makes you want to do it more, something like that. I felt like when I told people I was going into psychology or that I wanted to be a therapist, um, it kind of didn't make sense because I wasn't the smartest kid in school. And I think even in high school, I'm pretty sure psychology was like the class that I scored best in. And you only took that 1 year. That was my senior year. So was already applying to schools. I already knew what I wanted to do. But it just kind of goes to show, um, there's things that you want to do that you're just going to do when you're going to push yourself for. So a little bit of rambling there. Kind of lost track. But yeah, I just want to share these stories. I want to share growth. I want to share uh, happiness. I want to share challenges. And I want it to be mostly light, mostly casual, but there are going to be conversations held that are heavy, conversations that I feel are necessary to have, um, that I want other people to listen to, if obviously you feel comfortable. um, but yeah, I just want to get some stuff out there that I think is important. And other people might not, but um, other people might. And I just hope that there's a good enough connection there where people want to keep coming back and listening to more episodes, because I have some really cool ideas and really exciting things coming. Um, to say exciting, I feel like I've been using that word over and over and over for the past 2 weeks, trying to get all of this together. But yeah, um, just to kind of like close out, um, just have like a small conversation about something um, that I've been thinking of, and going back to that quote as well of, shame is joy interrupted. When we go into ourselves, there's a funny thing that happens where um, everything you know about who you are kind of makes absolutely no sense. So one day you can feel like you got everything together, you know who you are, you know what you want, you know your desires in life. And then when you become aware of what else is out there, that changes. And I kind of view society as this puzzle, right? Everything has its place where it fits. We're ruled by binary, we're ruled by yes and no, right and wrong. Um, and everything, every place, every person has its own little puzzle piece, right? And we're all meant to fit in this spot where society says, this is your spot, this is where your piece fits, um, and that's it, you know? And that's not it. Because there are other pieces or other empty spaces in that puzzle where um, you might fit better. There's other puzzles in general where you might fit better. And it's a little bit of a weird analogy, but that's my view on things, is that you're always going to find where you belong, and it might not be an easy process. It might take a very long time, but at the end of the day, we all know where we belong, and it's just a matter of finding it. Um, those are the exact stories that are going to be shared here on this podcast. And a little bit of mental health too, because I, of course, um, feel like that's a little bit important to talk about as well. But that is the gist of it all. And I'm excited to, here we go again. I'm happy and I can't wait to put more stuff out. Um, and I'm going to be posting every Thursday for the most part. And hopefully, it, just is as fulfilling for you as it is for me to be having these conversations. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you all next week.